Yeah.
Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. My name is Jerry Ford and I will be your host for this TLC session. We're excited that you've joined us today for the IRB application process at Ashford University. Why, how, and when? Please welcome Dr. Irina Weisblat, Dr. Charles Holmes, and Mr. Mike Noble.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jerry, for this introduction. And thank you for joining us on this first day of the 2018 now TLC conference. My name is Irina Weisblat, and together with my colleagues, Charles Holmes and Michael Noble, and I even noticed among our participants today is our newly appointed IRB chair, Lane is here. Hi, Lane. I will be talking today together with my colleagues about IRB application process at Ashford University. And we thought that this topic would be of interest and of value, hopefully, to many of our faculty members, even the most experienced researchers, for several reasons. First of all, we want you to meet our IRB members and get familiar with what we actually do on the board. We wanted to give you also an opportunity to ask questions about the IRB process. And we are getting closer, as you know, to that very special period of time during the year when our researchers will be applying for the Ashford University's fellowship grant. So it will be quite a busy time for us on the IRB board as we will be reviewing your applications. So it would be good to put the face with the name, so to speak, right? So in other words, we will do our best today to demystify the entire IRB process for you. And first, let me introduce the IRB members, as I mentioned. Just 1 second, I'm trying to navigate these slides. Hopefully, oops, that's not the one. Okay, you should see now the organizational chart, so to speak. You see that our esteemed chair of the IRB board is Dr. Charles Holmes. And Dr. Lane Andrew, as I mentioned, just recently was appointed to serve as IRB secretary. Every college is represented on IRB board, and Dr. Maureen Lino is representing College of Education, Dr. Sherry Swartz, College of Liberal Arts, Dr. Clifford Blizzard represents the Division of General Education, and Dr. Irina Weisblat, myself, is from the Forbes School of Business and Technology. What you do not see here is the picture of Michael Noble, who kindly agreed today to co-present with us. He is our esteemed Secretary Emeritus, as I call him, because he really, he just recently completed his term on IRB, and he did really a wonderful, wonderful job. As Dr. Holmes mentioned once, Michael completely revolutionized the application process with IRB, and we all are very, very grateful to him for that. I want to take this opportunity again and thank Michael for his excellent service on IRB board. Now, very briefly, I want to mention the values that guide our work. And I thought it would be also important for you to recall these values because so you would understand better, in other words, why we ask you researchers for certain corrections or revisions of your application, because after all, we all have to ensure the ethical research practices, right? And these, of course, include protection of human participants of research and commitment to the highest standards in conducting research. And of course, for us as IRB board at Ashford University, we need to ensure compliance with ethical principles of the Belmont Report and other federal regulations. Now I want to turn over to Dr. Holmes, who will explain the federal regulations that guide our work. Charles?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Weisblat. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. My portion is, I don't know, it's not very exciting, but I don't know that much with the IRB is terribly exciting. It's more just making sure that everything goes well and everyone's happy with the final outcomes. Just for your knowledge, the IRB is regulated by the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Health and Human Services. So technically, we're not an official part of Ashford University. As Dr. Weisblat mentioned, the purpose of the Institutional Review Board is to make certain that human subjects are protected at every level, and then we maximize beneficence. So beneficence is the idea that anyone who participates in any level of research that we're doing, as faculty or just researchers in general, we want to make certain that those who participate have the maximum amount of benefit for their participation. We do have sort of mandates in place. So what is coming up for 2019 is a new common rule. Common rule is what sort of regulates or determines within the IRB whether or not your review will be considered, exempt, minimal risk, moderate risk, or high risk. With the new common rule for 2019, a lot more are going to become exempt. One thing that I do want to emphasize is that you cannot self-declare yourself as exempt. You can list it when you go through the application, which Mr. Noble will be going through, but it is up to the IRB to determine if your declaration of exempt is actually accurate. As a benefit of this, though, because more research projects are going to be listed as exempt, that will expedite the process ultimately for all of us. So right now our turnaround time is about 2 weeks. So if you submit a complete application, everything's ready to go. It goes to one of our committee members, including myself, and we review the work. We make sure the human subjects are protected, everything's in place, and within 2 weeks, I would say 99% of the time, we're able to return you an approval letter. With the new common rule, those turnaround times should decrease. A lot more, again, studies are going to be considered exempt, so we may see turnaround times drop to about a week, because if everything's in place and all the survey questions are appropriate, then it's just going to be that much faster for us. Given the federal and state oversight that our office is under, again, we are not technically a part of Ashford. We do work within the Office of Research and Creative Scholarship, or ORCS, which is a part of Ashford, but we are a federally controlled arm. So when we make a decision, it's kind of supported or backed up by the NIH and the Department of Education. This means, though, unfortunately, that we do have a lot of situations where researchers will kind of self-declare themselves exempt from, human research or the IRB and conduct research on their own, and that can present several problems. One of the issues that does happen is, let's say you are doing something very benign like a survey, and you want to survey your students, and you go through and you ask them some very basic questions, and then you want to share that information with a public audience. That is protected human subjects information then. And we need to, as the IRB, make sure that those questions are appropriate. If we go to the extreme level, there are several groups within the United States that are protected: prisoners, those who are mental disabilities, the pregnant women. There's just multiple groups. If you were to interact with one of these groups and ask them a survey question that upset them or was problematic in any way, and you did not come through the IRB, should you be sued, everything would go to you as an individual. It would have nothing to do with us because we had no oversight on it. So see, the IRB is more of a kind of the buffer between the research participants and you, the researcher. If we sign off on it and there is a problem, then Ashford University and the insurance we carry can help to protect you. If you bypass us, everything goes on you, and it can create a real problem depending on how severe the instance is. One example I do want to share, or I guess it's two examples. The most famous ones I'm aware of, in 1999, Duke University and the University of Illinois at Chicago both were placed on 12-month research suspensions. This meant that the universities, both of them, could no longer accept federal grants, they could no longer publish, and they could no longer present at any national conferences or local conferences. They were banned. And that was because so many faculty had been bypassing the IRB that it was seen as somewhat of a loss of institutional control, and they lost everything for 12 months. We want to avoid that from happening. So again, I know it may seem like a cumbersome process, but as Mike will show you, it's pretty straightforward. But again, it is in your best interest to make sure that everything is in place the way we want it to be. Next slide, please.
You should be seeing the next slide now.
Yes, thank you. So how the IRB works is you'll submit an application packet, again, which Mr. Mike Noble will go through. The application packet will have all the information we need as reviewers to be able to successfully evaluate the work and make sure that everyone who's participating, including you, the researcher, are fully protected. What happens more often than not is that there is a slight back and forth that occurs. So a survey question may not be clear enough, or the group you're working with isn't as well defined as we need it to be to make sure that they're not a protected class. And we'll go back and forth through that process. And once the complete application is ready, then once everybody granted approval, you'll have a reviewer who will grant approval, and then it will come to me as the chair of the IRB to do a second look to make sure everything's in place. If everything does align, then you will receive an IRB approval letter from me and from the Institutional Review Board Committee that, again, allows you to have immediate access to your data, start collecting information, and start your work. The process itself, again, is about 2 weeks. Under the 2019 new common rule, we may be able to see those times drop to about 1 week. But yeah, ultimately, it's a pretty straightforward process. But the idea is that within the IRB and as committee members, our goal is to help you produce the best research as possible from the human subjects perspective. The Office of Research and Creative Scholarship will help you frame that research, but we are sort of the legal arm that makes sure that everybody is protected and everyone's doing the best work that they can do. So I'll now turn it back to Dr. Weisblat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I would at this point just want to remind our participants, please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat box in the chat room, or you can always email us later and we will be happy to answer. In the end of this presentation, I think that Jerry will allow us a few minutes also for live engagement. So we will take this opportunity also to answer your question. Thank you. And now we turn it over to Mike Noble. Mike?
Hi, everyone. First off, I just wanted to say it was indeed an honor to work with the IRB, specifically Dr. Holmes and Dr. Irina Weisblat and each of the members. They really are an esteemed group that work really hard to make sure that human participants are protected and that our university is protected as well in our research endeavors. And I also wanted to thank Dr. Jody Fikema, the unsung hero who turned over secretarial duties to me when I first started and trained me and then gave me free rein to go ahead and build. So I wanted to throw this up here. IRB information can actually be found, and it looks like I accidentally moved too fast into this slide. So give me just a second. So I've got a poll for you. What I want to find out from each of you is what are the most commonly considered, what are the common forms that you're going to submit with an IRB package? If you go ahead and vote there. And don't everyone be shy. There we go. All right, here we go.
Yes, we're getting some results now. Exciting.
Yes, and I think I've given away the answer is sitting right up in front of you on the, sorry.
Well, don't we do it often for our students?
I don't know. It was
That's what
different when
we
I handed it
do,
over
right?
to Dr. Weisblat. She got all the answers right. Imagine that. All right, so we've got several answers there. Oh, here we go. Now we're getting some different answers. All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and end that poll, and we're going to share the results. So the most commonly is the research summary. Absolutely. So what I've done here is I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about those different parts of it. So what we're looking at here, if you go to this website here, this gives all the forms that you will need from the IRB. When I was handed this process, we wanted to create a very homogeneous experience for everyone who is submitting. We typically would get a lot of requests, specifically when all of the grants were awarded. And so we wanted to create a process where everyone would get the same format of an email, that there would be templates, and that we would build out how to complete the process. So I just wanted to cover those. The first one is the Appendix B. That is the top one that gets submitted with the application cover sheet. And what that does is it identifies who are the principal investigators, who are the co-investigators, and then it goes through an agreement between the researcher and the IRB about conduct that will be conducted and how it will be conducted when research is being when it's being completed. It also goes through and asks you to self-identify what the status of your research is, whether that's it wouldn't offer any harm, whether it would be a high risk study, a moderate risk, and then it asks you to sign for your agreement to how you're going to conduct the research. Number 2 is the Appendix C, which is the research summary. What that is it goes through and you explain as a researcher what your scope of research is going to be. You give your literature review. You talk about why you're going to be conducting this research and what's the research that's already out there that you're building upon. And also in that are the directions to build a consent form. So if you're dealing with human beings, you need to have their consent. And the Appendix G is an example of how a consent would be built. It is not the consent form that you would use, but it is an example. And then the directions for building your consent are actually in Appendix C in the research summary. Then the 4th thing that you would submit is a CD certification. That's the human testing certification that you agree to in your application that shows that you've gone through the training to be able to understand what are the parameters and what are the limitations of asking questions and of gathering research. And finally, I just wanted to touch on something that Dr. Holmes had mentioned in his, and it's quite important. I went to an NIH, the National Institute of Health, IRB forum here in San Diego last year. And one of the things they talked about was exempt status. And this has come up, and there are rule changes that are coming. But one of the things that the NIH specifically spelled out, and it's one of the guidelines that we have to operate under. These aren't just issues or guidelines and policies that we enacted, but they're actually the policies that we operate under as an institution and as an IRB. So is the exempt status. And their point was this, that no one has the right to self-identify as an exempt status. They actually need to have someone from the IRB look at the research and determine whether or not it is an exempt. So I think that was a really important determination. Again, I just wanted to clarify that those are policies that we follow as an IRB, and that's because we follow the guidelines set up by the NIH. They're not just guidelines that we've created. So I did want to offer that There is a lot of help to be offered. I know that the process can be difficult and it can be daunting, but there's definitely a path through it, and the IRB is committed to helping you get through that. Because I'm no longer IRB secretary, I'm going to include Dr. Lane Andrews' email. Sorry, Lane, I'm throwing you out there, buddy. And also the IRB Ashford, that address where you can reach people to ask questions, because that's really what we're here to do. The IRB is meant to help you get through that process, understand what the guidelines are and the limitations, and be able to help you. So that's all I have. Back to you, Dr. Weisblat.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really, really valuable information, and I'm so pleased that even I learned something, even though I knew there's information that Appendix J covers in general, but it's good to know that the federal regulations now actually look more closely at these issues. And again, I wanted just to emphasize to our viewers and to all of our researchers that don't be shy. Please always feel free to reach out to any of the IRB board members, and particularly to your representatives in your schools. Thanks again, Mike. And one more reminder, on this IRB website, you will also find our handbook, which is very useful. It will be particularly useful to you guys when you are filling out your application forms. So again, if something needs clarification, please let us know. You do not need to wait until you completely finish your application. You can always catch us in the middle of whatever we are doing, and we will be happy to answer your questions. And talking about questions, now is the questions time. And I know that our chair, Dr. Holmes, has one question to answer already.
Yes. Dana Shelton asked in the chat box, when will Rockies folks start using the Ashford IRB? That's a great question, Dana. And the answer is that the Rockies faculty are immediately able to start utilizing the Ashford IRB. The Rockies IRB is still in place, but it is going to only oversee the students. So what the differentiation between the Ashford IRB and the Rockies IRB is that Rockies being a doctoral institution, you've always had to review dissertations and things like that within your IRB. That's not something that Ashford has done before up until this merger. So what is going to happen is all faculty and staff that wish to do research will come through the Ashford IRB, and any students who are looking to do research as part of their curriculum will continue to go through the Rockies IRB, because that's a space where they've been accustomed. Once the merger has more time to, we'll say, marinate or process itself, then the two IRBs will actually merge in some way, and then we will start to take basically all of the research applications.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Now I see we have another question from Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca, very much, who is asking for our students who they should submit their proposal. Please correct me, colleagues, if I'm wrong, but I think that at this point, the Ashford faculty are the only ones who could be the primary investigators. Is that correct, Tom? Right.
Yes, yes.
So
the IRB, well,
right.
all faculty, Rockies now too, but
Well,
Rockies
yes,
is part
yes.
of Ashford. But yes,
Yeah.
all faculty members are allowed to serve, full-time faculty members.
Full-time faculty.
Serve as primary investigators. Associate faculty members at this time are not allowed to serve as primary investigators, but are welcome to join in on research or suggest research ideas to full-time faculty members if they do wish to pursue it. For students, looking at some of the chat questions, we have one from Dr. Wardlow. For our students, who should they submit to? They should still continue to go through the Rockies IRB. You are correct that most institutions only have one institutional review board, but because the merger has taken place, the Department of Education and the NIH are both allowing this to exist for a short term as we transition to basically a merged university. But the Rockies have in place the protocols and a system for handling student submissions. The Ashford IRB has never allowed students to become primary investigators, so it is not something that we're really in a position to field, not knowing what Rockies faculty and what their curriculum have as research standards.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. So for clarifying that, so the doctoral students will be continuing to submit their applications to the Rockies IRB, but what if other students want to pursue the research? My understanding is that still the faculty member, the full-time faculty member, should serve as the primary investigator, and the student then will be a co-investigator. Like we saw this type of situations in the research of our colleagues.
Yes.
Let's say, as a very good example of Dr. Pedersen, who did research and students participated in it as co-investigators. Now we have another interesting question from Jesse, who asked about their research that was off to a slow start, and now they want to resubmit for the Fellows Grant in 2019. Is that possible? And whether they would need to resubmit to IRB. So to answer the part about IRB, I should just emphasize the fact that if you already have the approval letter from IRB, which is signed by our chair, Dr. Holmes, that letter is good for 1 year of the research. So if that, when that time expires, you will need to either resubmit, depending on on the circumstances, meaning whether your research in general has any changes or significant revisions, or whether it remains the same, then you can use one of the forms to IRB to extend that timing of the, I'm sorry, for the IRB approval. I apologize. As far as the fellowship grant application itself, I would refer you to Dr. Gerald Kerwin, who is in charge of the Office of Research and Scholarship, who will be probably better qualified to answer that question, whether you need to resubmit that or not. Or perhaps they can also give you an extension. That's the best way I can answer that question. If Dr. Holmes, you can add something to that, please do.
No, I think you did a great summary. Yeah, if you have a work that was previously approved by the IRB and there are no substantial changes, then you can make a request for a renewal or an extension. And those are very, very quick procedures, just saying nothing's changed. I'm still just conducting research, and we're happy to grant you a new approval letter for 1 more year. If you do have any significant changes, significant is a broad word, but if you change survey questions, if you've changed the way you're going to collect data, if you change the participants, anything like that, you've added researchers, that would be a little bit more substantial. So you'd want to make sure that you're submitting the correct forms, and at that point you may have to do a full resubmission, but it probably would go through in an expedited fashion. Let's see. And then we have Dr. Weisblat. We have 2 questions from Raymond. Does Ashford require doctoral dissertation chairs to have city certification? And which IRB handbook would be used for guidance for dissertation for students? It's a great question, Raymond. As far as doctoral dissertation chairs, that is something that is still regulated by the Rockies, University of the Rockies, and their IRB. So you will want to contact them. I believe their email is irb@rockies.edu. And Dr. Jeremy Moreland is overseeing the Rockies IRB as well as the College of Doctoral Studies, and he would certainly be in a position to tell you whether or not you need to have that city certification. Based off my previous experience at the University of Illinois and surveying or monitoring and being a part of dissertation chairs and committees, you do need the city training, so I'm assuming that would apply to the Rockies. As far as the IRB handbook that you would be using, for the time being, as long as you're working with students, that would continue to be the Rockies IRB handbook. And if it's you as a faculty member wanting to do research, then it would be under the Ashford handbook. And if Dr. Weisblat doesn't mind, I would like to add that we are currently working with the Office of Research and Creative Scholarships to create a more streamlined application process. So right now, the process, as Mike laid out, was you first go through the Office of Research and Creative Scholarship and you gain approval to work with students, work within your classroom, whatever it may be, and then you come to the IRB. The goal is that we're going to try and create one uniform PDF document that will not only answer the questions that the Office of Research and Creative Scholarship have for you, but also the IRB. So yeah, that is on the horizon. I don't know how soon it will be, but it's something exciting to look forward to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. Thank you so much, Mike. I see that you provide the email addresses here, which is excellent. Frankly, I do not see any other questions, but I'm sure we have another minute. So if you guys have any questions, please do ask us now, or again, at any time. You're welcome to contact us with any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Weisblat. It does look like we're out of time. I wanted to thank all three of you so much for your informative presentation and for all of you who have joined us in this session. Enjoy the rest of the TLC.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you in some other room today. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.